Hello, BookTube. I have some mail for you today on this snowy day. It's been snowing like the dickens all day here in Boston. very, very peaceful. It doesn't have the feel of aggressive snow. It's more picturesque than anything else, and it's not going to accumulate too much, I doubt. And those kinds of things are less worrisome, so it's easier to enjoy, especially when you're ensconced on a warm, soft couch. But I did get mail. Including some periodicals. I got the new Asimovs, for instance. I subscribed to Asimovs in analog, and after a bit of a bumpy start, I now have both of them flowing regularly. That's fantastic. I think I subscribed for 2 years each. So now I have a new Asimovs and a new analog, so I will have a lot of good stuff to read. I also got something that you may think of at first as a kind of anachronism, a kind of, an oddity for our current times. It's Condé Nast Traveler. For a while there, in the wake of the 2016 presidential election, I let all of my political magazine subscriptions lapse, and I got subscriptions instead to Coastal Living, to Cape Cod magazine, and to a whole bunch of travel magazines that weren't going to have any political content, and that was short-sighted in one sense. There was no way that I was not going to pay attention to politics. I shouldn't have bothered even trying. But in another way, I was reading these travel magazines, and I was thinking, okay, why did you do They were dirt cheap. The subscriptions were dirt cheap. But for places like Condé Nast Traveler or Dwell or Arteshel Digest, stuff like that, the subscriptions were cheap, but I asked myself, why were you doing this? Why did you do this? And then I realized as I was reading these travel magazines, this was a couple of years ago, I realized, well, all of your travel from now on is going to be vicarious, so why not enjoy it in these things? They're well put together. The photography is fantastic. Often the writing is very good. Sometimes in some of these magazines, especially the travel magazines, will commission a piece from a writer, from a novelist or a nonfiction writer who just happens to be going someplace, and they'll commission a piece for that writer to write about it. So you get an unexpected treat of turning the page and encountering a writer whose work you really like, writing about, Marrakesh or whatever. And then, of course, in 2020, everybody's travel became vicarious, and that made these things feel a little more poignant. And they've stuck through. God bless them. They have stuck through. They have shouldered what has to be, the travel industry has to be one of the hardest hit of all industries in the wake of this pandemic. And in this issue, they have a little bit here called "Here's to the Future," with a lovely seascape. There's a dining table under blankets. We've locked down, canceled trips, and spent countless milestones, birthdays, graduations, honeymoons, cooped up at home. But with an end in sight, it's time for a do-over, time to dream again, to book that cruise, map out an epic road trip, or plan a family reunion, to remind ourselves why we travel in the first place, to celebrate ourselves, one another, and the world. And that picture is a private dinner on an uninhabited atoll. And I applaud the sentiment, although I don't believe it's true. I don't believe the end is in sight. And I don't know what kind of a rebound the travel industry would make. I cannot myself, maybe other people think differently, but I cannot conceive of any circumstances in which I would feel comfortable on a cruise ship. Now, I couldn't really conceive of that anyway. Even when I was traveling, I never did anything like that. I never did any pack 'em in like sardines commercial traveling like that at all. Never. Not even so much as a package safari or something like that with Land Rovers. But plenty of people were able to imagine that. I can't imagine right now how anyone could think that a cruise ship is a good idea. COVID-19 is not anywhere near done with the human race, nor are any of its 24 variants, and that's to say nothing of the next COVID-20. That's right around the corner. It's right around the corner. Somewhere in sub-Saharan Africa, someone's encountering it right now. By eating the brains of an emu without cooking them or something like that. Or all the darker rumors about COVID-19. Who knows? Who knows? I think raging pathogens of a novel kind, that we don't have just a steady, ready-made armament of vaccines and treatments for, are going to be the norm rather than the exception in the 21st century. And that's to say nothing of the fact that it's a crisis that is looming that has been sort of shunted to one side because of COVID-19, which is that ordinary viruses are mutating past the range of ordinary countermeasures in ordinary human medicine. Many frontline virologists are saying that we are not far off from being in a time before antibiotics were created, before antiviral regimens were created, before any of that was. We're right on the verge of being in the year AD 100 instead of the AD or 2100, where you get something like the flu, and I'm sorry, you'll either survive or you won't. Most people don't, but there's nothing we can do about it. There's nothing that medical science can do about it, because nothing has kept pace with how fast these things mutate. We shall see. We shall see. In the meantime, I will soak up my travel with the various travel magazines that come to me. But we have mail. We have some packages and a box that I rescued from the snow. So let's start with this first one. This first one is a manila envelope of suspicious provenance. It looks almost like something that someone would give me. I'm not even going to act surprised anymore. Rule number 1 on this channel is don't send me a book. Don't do it. Don't send me a book. And yet people have been breaking that rule left, right, and center. So what have we got here? What is this? Oh, no, it has a printed pub sheet. It has a printed pub sheet. What have we got here? From Autumn Hill Books in Bloomington, Indiana. Any of you in Bloomington, Indiana? We recently published 2 AHB titles, Autumn Hill Books titles, that I hope you'll be interested in. Leonardo Valencia's Katzbeck, translated by Hilary Gully, and The John Cage Experiences by Vincent Tholome, translated by Alex Niemi. Autumn Hill Books focuses primarily on translations into English, mostly prose, but also an occasional poetry title if we really like it. The Cage volume is in this category. Interesting. We also run an imprint called 91st Meridian Books, which is affiliated with Iowa's International Writing Program. I founded the press in Iowa in 2005 and brought it with me to Indiana when we moved here in 2012. Okay, fantastic. So what have we got here? So the John Cage Experiences is the poetry equivalent. These are lovely things physically. This is the John Cage Experiences, 8 solos, duos, or trios with things by Vincent Tholome, translated by Alex Niemi. Tiny little thing. In 1935, John Cage regularly drives around Arizona desert in a red and chrome race car. He regularly caresses the hot steering wheel with his hand while he crosses the hot and frankly boiling Arizona desert at top speed. In 1935, in the Arizona desert, tons of dust rise into the air as John Cage goes by. When John Cage, in 1935, in the Arizona desert, hears the purring. Oh, this is one of the poems that's on the back. Okay. Okay, so then the other one is Kazbek by Leonardo Valencia, translated by Hilary Gully. Another very slim thing here. This one has lots and lots of interior artwork. Okay, I don't have any dates on these things, but that's all right. I will look them up. They certainly look like nothing I have received anytime recently. So that's interesting in its own right. All right, and that wasn't from one of you. That wasn't a violation of rule number 1, because publishers can send me anything they want. And it looks like that's what the rest of these are. So let's see what this next one is. Oh, okay, great, fantastic. This is from tor.com, and this is by Django Wexler, and this is Hard Reboot. Giant freaking robots. Hard Reboot. Kaz, K-A-S, is a junior researcher on a fact-finding mission to Old Earth. But when a con artist tricks her into wagering a large sum of money belonging to her university on the outcome of a manned robot arena battle, she becomes drawn into the seedy underworld of Old Earth politics and state-sponsored battle droid prize fights. Tiny little thing, a novella, really. Okay, great. Giant freaking robots. So this comes out in May. All right. Then we'll do this next one. I never know what I'm going to get on this channel. I don't ever know. What is this next one? Okay, is this translated literature? No. No? I shouldn't have to check, so let's make sure that it's not. No, it doesn't look like it is. This is Tante Eva by Paula Bomer. And this comes out, again, in May. At first, this book may seem like a departure from Paula Bomer's provocative and brutally raw work. Set in East Berlin after the fall of the Berlin Wall, the setting alone makes this an immersive historical read. The desolate U-Bahn, Soviet-style apartment blocks, the skinheads on the corner who never seem to come or go. But it is Eva, retired nurse living in poverty, whose interior life is given center stage. This visceral dive into the female experience, specifically of a woman like Eva, aging and lonely and rarely depicted in such depth, cements Bomer's legacy as an essential writer on women, desire, and self-determination. Though firmly historical, the quotidian details of Eva's existence strike the modern reader like a hot poker. The suspended animation that colors her days doesn't speak so much as scream to the current moments of waiting, uncertainty, and powerlessness. Eva gets through her day on a combination of pills, stimulants to rise, sleeping pills to rest, and brandy, weathering the occasional visit from her young neighbor Krista, whose vacillations between cruelty and kindness embodies the incertitude of the future and the soul. Eva waits for the visits of her married lover, whose whims dictate their relationship. Okay, I don't think I know this author. Do any of you? Paula Bomer is the author of the novel 9 Months and the story collection Baby and Inside Madeline. And she lives in Brooklyn. Okay, great. So this comes out in May. I have time to set it aside, and then I'll get to it closer to May, probably at the beginning of May. Let's see what this next one is. All these things, all these packages are moisture spattered because they've all spent various amounts of time out in the snow. What is this? What is this next one? Oh my, okay. This is by Scott Borchert, and this is Republic of Detours: How the New Deal Paid Broke Writers to Rediscover America. I think I know what this is about. It's a fascinating story. If so, let's see. As we find ourselves in an era of political, moral, and economic crisis, we look back in time for wisdom. How did America bounce back from previous tumultuous presidencies? The presidency of Donald Trump was not tumultuous. It was tumultuous until its final week, when the president incited a violent mob to march on the Capitol, breach the building, and overthrow the United States government to install himself as an unelected dictator. Do you see how that kind of breaks the narrative? Do you see how that breaks the narrative? That breaks the narrative. Okay? I rented an apartment. I thought it was lovely. I cleaned it top to bottom, and I was careful so that I wouldn't lose my security deposit. Fred also rented an apartment, and he cleaned it top to bottom because he was concerned about his security deposit, and then he butchered his landlord. So he had to do more cleaning because there was lots of blood and gore all over the place. Do you see how it breaks the narrative? It breaks the narrative. His presidency was not tumultuous, and that is fascist Nazi ideology history rewriting. It wouldn't be if his presidency had stopped before he incited a violent armed mob to breach the capital of my country and overthrow the government to install himself as an unelected dictator. Since he did that, his presidency is not tumultuous. You can come up with a better word. There's one right handy that starts with the letter T. Anyway, How did we beat the Spanish flu? How did we deal with the unemployment during the Great Depression? In a time of economic downturn, record-breaking unemployment, and calls for a Green New Deal, it's not only natural to draw parallels to FDR's public works projects. In this book, which comes out in mid-June, now that we've got past the rant, get back to the book. The book comes out in mid-June. The author focuses on one particular enterprise, the Federal Writers Project. I knew it. Fantastic. There are so many great stories in this. A division of the Workers' Progress, the WPA, that employed an eclectic bunch of writer types under one common goal, to create a series of guidebooks for each of the 48 states, as well as certain cities and locales, such as New York City and Death Valley. But these weren't your average guidebooks. What came out of the undertaking, staffed not only by unemployed reporters, clerks, and librarians, but also by anyone else deemed unsuitable for physical labor, little jab there, was a collection of sprawling, deeply reported explorations, unpractical for tourists, but packed with reading pleasure, comprising essays on local history and folklore, profiles of cities and towns, and automobile tours riddled with stories of shipwrecks, slave rebellions, and labor strikes. The guides presented an accurately scattered national character. At a time when our nation's identity was in question, they sought to establish an all-encompassing American ethos, a new democratic patriotism, and, according to reviews and book sales, the project succeeded. A large collective writing project of all time, the largest collective writing project of all time, the Federal Writers Project employed thousands of Americans, including some of the 20th century's most prominent literary figures. Divided into chapters on famous writers such as Zora Neale Hurston and Richard Wright, as well as lesser-known contributors, Republic of Detours, this book, mid-June, takes readers on a tour of the American guides from their inceptions to their eventual dismemberment by the House Committee on Un-American Activities. Grappling with questions of racial representation, who is entitled to tell whose stories, and who gets to be considered a laborer, this immersive book tells a tale at once nostalgic and timely. Fantastic. This is a great story. And it comes out in bits and pieces in other books. And I believe, if I remember correctly, there was one other book on this subject. One other big popular book. I think about, I want to say 30 years ago, but I'll have to check and see. I'm obviously going to need to know that if I'm going to write about this. So who is Scott Borchert? There is no better person to tell this story than Scott Borchert, who inherited a set of 376 guides from his great uncle, a traveling businessman who stumbled upon Kentucky, a guide to the bluegrass state, at a bookstore in 1942, then dedicated his life to tracking down the rest. So this guy inherited a huge set of them. Picking up where his old Uncle Fred left off, Borchert has spent years researching the guides and their writers. Okay, fantastic. All right, fantastic. This comes out in June, and I can't wait. I will wait. I don't particularly want to, but I will wait because there's so much else ahead of this on the assembly line, but I know that I'm going to enjoy it. Just know that I am. And then we have the box, which was covered in snow when I found it. For a forlorn thing, it was covered in snow. But it's a box, not an envelope, so I doubt that any of the contents will be hurt. Let's see what we have here. Oh, we've got some sort of production number in here. What is... Oh, okay, no. It's just... No, it's just... oddly done. That's all. Okay, so this is the finished copy of something I think we've seen before. This is from Erewhon Books, and this is On Fragile Waves by E. Lily Liu. Lovely thing. And finished copy that comes out. Okay, it came out on the 2nd, so this is very this is out already. The haunting story of a family of dreamers and tale-tellers looking for home in an unwelcoming world. This exquisite and unusual magic realist debut, oh, it's a debut, fantastic, told in intensely lyrical prose by award-winning author, traces one girl's migration from war to peace, loss to loss, home to home. Firouzeh and her brother Noor are children of fire, born in an Afghanistan fractured by war. When their parents, their Ate and Abe, decide to leave, they spin fairy tales of their destination, the mythical land of opportunities of Australia. It's a myth to me. I've never been there. All I've ever done is hear about it and read about it. As the family journeys from Pakistan to Indonesia, heading towards the hopes of home, they must rely on fragile and temporary shelters, strangers both mercenary and kind, and friends who vanish as quickly as they're found. And when they arrive in Australia, what seemed like stable shore gave way to treacherous currents. Neighbors, classmates, and the government seek their own ends, indifferent to the family's fate. For Firze, her fantasy worlds provide some relief, but as her family and home splinter, she must surface from these imaginings and find a new way. Okay. Um, okay, so the author has won awards for short fiction, it seems like, but not this is the debut novel. Okay, fantastic. So, a hardcover out already. This will already be in your bookstore, so if it sounded of interest to you, you can just go and find it. I'm going to have to, I don't know, none of that sounded familiar, so I might not be thinking of the right book. I might not have an advanced copy of this, which would mean that I would have to go and read this right away, because it's a little late. So there we go. That was not a bad mail haul at all. Very interesting. We have On Fragile Waves, a debut. We have Republic of Detours, about the Federal Writers Project, part of the WPA, that employed a whole bunch of people who were no good for anything else. We have Tante Eva, set in East Berlin, after the wall came down. I don't think I've ever read a work of fiction set in that environment. Then Hard Reboot, giant freaking robots. And two of these things, these two slim, Kazbek and the John Cage Experiences, two slim, lovely little paperbacks there. So there we go. Kind of an odd mail haul. I'm pretty sure this is all I'm going to get. I wasn't expecting mail today at all in the middle of a snowstorm. It's not a bad snowstorm, but still, you'd expect people to take the day off. I would anyway. But if there's more mail, as usual, you will be the first to know. Otherwise, I'm going to wrap this up. But I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.